Hi, everyone. Welcome. We have Erin Canter here with us. She is our Manager of Science Literacy and Research at Tremont, and she's going to be giving us a Monarch Tagging update. Hi, Erin.
Hey, Megan. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. So I am actually calling in from Florida. So if you listen carefully, you can hear some birds that you might not hear all the time up there. But I'm just calling in to talk a little bit about our Monarch Tagging program and how it went this year. And so if you're not familiar already, I'll just give like a brief overview of what even is Monarch Tagging. The number one question I get is like, how do you tag a monarch? How do you tag a butterfly? Good question. I myself did not know until a few years ago. But what we do is we go out, and monarchs are a really incredible species for a lot of different reasons. But one in particular is that they're the only butterfly species that has a two-way migration. In other words, they go all the way from Mexico, from Michoacan, which is in central Mexico, kind of near the state of Mexico, where Mexico City is. They go all the way up to Canada, and then they go back in the wintertime to Mexico. So what we're catching and what we're trying to understand is the monarchs that come through on their fall migration to Mexico, coming through Cades Cove, what are those populations like? How are their numbers? Are they healthy? Are they increasing, decreasing? What is the sex ratio of males to females, and how will that impact monarchs? So all of those things we're trying to understand. And what's really interesting about monarchs in particular is that this migration is not like our birds, right? So if you are familiar with other community science projects that we have, like the bird banding project, you'll know that our Louisiana water thrush, for example, this bird that comes to our valley and nests and mates and has babies in our valley, comes back every year, right? So we might get the same bird every year for many, many years, coming back from Honduras or other areas in South or Central America and coming back up. Well, monarchs, it actually takes them 4 to 5 generations to complete the migration. So the monarchs that we tag, they're not going to be going back and forth. They'll be going and leaving Mexico in the spring, and then mating, and then laying eggs, and then they die, and then their babies continue on the migration all the way up to Canada. And what we're finding is that 4th or 5th generation of monarch that's going all the way down to Mexico. So how do we track them? How do we figure it out? Well, we catch them in butterfly nets, and we run around fields and catch butterflies, which is a pretty awesome way to spend any fall day. And then we put these little tiny, and I truly don't know if you can see this, but little tiny tags that are this big. This is my handy educational water bottle. And we put little tags on their wings, and the little tags have specific numbers and letters on them. And that letters and number combination is special for only that bird. I don't know if you can hear the red-tailed hawk, which is why I said bird instead of butterfly, because I was distracted. Red-shouldered hawk. Okay, so we put these little tags on them. If they're found again in Mexico, we'll know that the monarchs that came through Cades Cove in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park are making their way all the way to Mexico, which we have done. We found monarchs in Michoacan, in Sierra Chincua, which is the monarch butterfly reserve in that area. Many years in a row, we find our butterflies there. So I don't do this alone in any way. I'm a fairly small part of this because who runs these programs is our incredible team of volunteers who've been doing it for way longer than I have. Some of them, we have some new volunteers that are coming in and being trained by our old volunteers. It's a really incredible community of people that are spreading the word of not only love of monarchs, but also science in general. So we came up with a list, all of us together, of some of the goals that we had for our tagging program. It's a free educational program for anyone who wants to sign up. But we have some goals, and you might be surprised to know that one of our goals is actually, none of our goals is to tag as many monarchs as possible. Our goal is really to engage people and have folks who have never been to the Cove or never learned about monarchs or other butterfly species, and to get them to notice those species a little bit more. We also provide some resources, like how can you help monarchs in your backyard? And then also having folks having a fundamental trust and understanding of the scientific process by being a part of that process themselves. So we go out and we catch butterflies in butterfly nets, and then we fill out these reports for Monarch Watch, which is just this special code. We say whether it is male or female, the date, the location, and all of this data is sent to a national program called Monarch Watch. So every single participant is contributing to real data and real science, which is pretty exciting. And cool. Megan, could you go to the next slide so we can see how it went this year? So first of all, I have to say, I was thanking all of my Monarch Tagging volunteers because they're all absolutely invaluable to this project in so many ways, not just like their enthusiasm, but their knowledge. But I want to draw special attention to Melissa Starr, who actually donated our Monarch tags this year, which is really helpful. It goes through a really great program, which is Monarch Watch, but any little bit like this really helps. So thank you, Melissa, for doing that. But this year, there was some weird things going on, right? Cades Cove was closed through September. We actually had fewer Monarch tagging dates, but just like last year, when we did run this program, despite COVID, we are outside all the time, which is kind of the safest place to be. So we were only tagging essentially the month of October, and we still tagged 106 monarchs. Now that's not our final number because we have another person, Wanda DeWard, who many of you probably know that name, the Monarch Queen, who started this program many, many years ago. She has her data as well. And so we're gonna combine all of our things, but just through Tremont, we have 106 monarchs that were tagged. And interestingly, if you read the Monarch Tagging report last year, which you can find on our website, the Monarch Tagging 2020 report, we were finding this pattern that there were way more males being tagged than females. A couple different research papers have come out suggesting that this is an issue that we've been having within the data sets, not just at Tremont, but overall. So it was interesting to see this year, we actually had a flip. Now, 106 monarchs is not enough to do any kind of statistical analysis over patterns or long-term, but this is a really interesting data point of more females this time than males, which is not what we normally get. Why? I don't know. Let's keep tagging. Let's figure it out. But we had over 200, nearly 200 community members were engaged through our 26 tagging dates. So we have both public dates, totally free to the public, and private dates, which are with groups that we want to engage a little bit more. Folks in our own community or in the Knox County community that have never been to the Cove. So how can we as Tremont engage more people? So those are the stats from this year. Like I said, I haven't gotten all of the data back yet. And I will need to put all this in and send it to Monarch Watch, and we'll see how our data is contributing to the national and international story of the monarch butterfly. That's all I have. Do you have questions?
Thank you so much for that. So yeah, we went ahead and asked our viewers that are with us right now whether they've noticed any monarchs migrating in their area. And Adam mentioned, he said, I don't see many around home, but was on the summit of Table Rock in North Carolina back in October and saw dozens of them streaming past, headed south, and it was an amazing sight. So I can only imagine that just like seeing these big swirling masses of butterflies is just like one of the coolest experiences that you can possibly have.
Yeah, Adam, thanks for sharing that. What's really interesting about monarchs in particular and their conservation is when you think of endangered species in general, like the manatee or whoever it is that you're concerned about, it's the species itself that is endangered, right? So if enough of those species are killed or die off or don't have resources, then it will go extinct. Monarchs is interesting because what we're protecting is not the species, right? There are independent populations of monarchs all over the world. There's a Western group of monarchs that doesn't necessarily migrate all the way to Mexico. And then our Eastern ones are the ones that have this multi-generational migration. So what we're conserving is not just the species. So you notice like you don't see as many or things like that. But actually the culture of the butterfly. So it's the culture of migration, of kind of like immigrating and finding a place that is good and healthy for you and your offspring. That's what we're protecting. So the migration itself is in danger. If there's not enough space, milkweed, which is their obligate species, they only lay eggs on milkweed. Their caterpillars only eat milkweed. There's not enough native milkweeds planted, or if there are not enough of the oyamel trees in Mexico for them to overwinter on, that will disrupt the migration. But it likely would not destroy the species itself. So it gives us an ecological kind of ethical conundrum of how do we protect species, not just individuals and not just the DNA of the species, but their actual culture and the things that they depend on. So I am actually, like I said, I'm in Florida, and I was on the coast this past weekend near St. Vincent Island National Wildlife Refuge. I saw over 20 monarchs. So even though they're long gone, Adam, you mentioned in October, that's when we see most of them in Tennessee, coming through Tennessee, North Carolina. But now they're still here in Florida, and there's some question to suggest maybe some of them stay in Florida all the time. Maybe they don't migrate all the way to Mexico. We don't necessarily know why. There's a lot of studies out there on what could potentially be influencing monarchs, including planting non-native milkweeds is one possible implicated kind of thing for why we're not seeing monarchs continuing their migration. So yeah, there's definitely more to see, but it is really incredible when we're out in the fields, and our volunteers will know this, is that, yeah, sometimes you tag monarchs, 106 monarchs, but there are so many more that are just flying overhead, just heading straight in the direction of Mexico, ready to overwinter down there.
I see that Walt had the question that I think you answered a little bit earlier, Erin, but it says, seems like we tagged quite a bit less than we did last year. And I know that there were a couple of reasons for that, if you'd like to go over that again.
Yeah, so is this Walt Peterson? Hi, Walt.
Yeah.
Well, Walt's one of our Monarch Tagging volunteers, and also a Cades Cove volunteer, just all around volunteer. Salamander volunteer as well. So lots of overlap there. But yeah, so that's interesting. I was looking at Monarch Watch report this year. And Monarch Watch, again, if you missed that, is the organization that sends us our tags and our data sheets and everything. They kind of gather all the information and do some analyses on it that way. So Monarch Watch, there's some, not confusion, but predictions that could go either way. In other words, like, maybe we'll see way more monarchs this year because it seems like a good spring for them. Maybe we won't. Maybe it'll be more than last year. For us, it was less than last year. Part of that was that we didn't start tagging as early as we normally do because of Cades Cove road closures. But another thing could be we had a really rainy fall as well. So there was a couple of days that I went out there that the monarchs were low in the grass. So there's thistle, like a purple thistle. You'll see a lot of asters, goldenrod, things that the species are normally nectaring on. They would stay really low in the fields and not fly up because their wings were still wet. And so they would be waiting for the temperatures to rise. So like cold, rainy, all these things are really important to think about. What is it that affects monarchs? And especially think about climate change. What is going to happen in the future? Are we going to have rainier days? This is a La Nina year, so the weather patterns will be somewhat similar to last year. Could be more rain, could be colder. So all of these things affect the species. And if you think about how to protect a species that spans 3 different nations, there's a whole other kind of systems in place that we have to think about coordination with folks from Canada, from Mexico, and the US. And I do want to point out that folks in Mexico who are conservationists, who care about the same things that we care about, they give up a lot to protect their monarchs. So we go out and we tag folks in Michoacan. They give up tons of land. They're planting oyamel trees. They've made an entire tourism industry based on this. And a lot of times they really put their lives at risk to protect these butterflies in a way that we're not really familiar with. The Mazaja people monarchs have been a part of their culture for a really long time. So I talked about conserving monarch butterfly culture, but it's actually really their culture and monarchs is really tied in with a lot of human cultures as well. And so it's worth thinking about. That was a tangent, but it's all connected. It's all ecology. We're all connected here. So we don't know exactly. We'll see what the final numbers are, not just from Tremont and from Great Smoky Mountains National Park, but just in general for folks who are tagging all over the US and who find those tags in Mexico as well. Like, what do those populations look like? Well, that's yet to be seen.
Just as a reminder, all of this work comes to you because of our amazing volunteers at Tremont, because of Tremont staff, because of people who donate to us year over year and really keep the spirit of Tremont going. I also wanted to ask Erin, if somebody's tuning in for the first time and they've never experienced monarch tagging and they want to, how do they do that?
Very carefully. No, you can contact me about it. So all of our public days, we said 26 total tagging dates, but often we have more than that when the cove is open. We publish our public dates around the beginning of September, late August, and they're free and open to the public. So we do have a limit on the number of people that can sign up for each day, and that limit is 10. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, if we're trying to conserve monarchs, we want to conserve the habitats in which they live, right? So we don't want a ton of people going out, maybe damaging some of the plants, some of the milkweed. There's still caterpillars out there in September. So we limit it to 10, but also so that we have a better volunteer facilitator, our volunteer educator team, and participant ratio. That way you get to learn some of these things that are our goals for you, which is how to use a field guide, how to notice different things about butterflies, how to identify using that field guide, using the GSMA poster that we have of like monarch butterflies. So all of these resources that we bring out there to you, we want to make sure that you have a one-on-one experience and understand how to tag. Not just how to tag, but also how to identify, like, what is milkweed? Like, how do we do these things? So we keep it limited to 10. But if you're interested and you want to go out there, make sure to keep an eye on our public dates. Like I said, go out the end of August or September, and you can sign up. You can register through our website to sign up, come out, tag with us. Even if you don't tag a single monarch on the day that you go out, there's so much that you can learn about what other butterfly species, how do you know a buckeye from a clouded sulfur, things like that. So, and how to use a field guide, what is the monarch story. We can look at maps together, figure out where they're going. Even if we don't tag any monarchs, that still gives us a lot of information. Zeros are really important data that we often forget about. No monarchs means what? Was it raining? Was it what was it that led to no monarchs that day? So yes, sign up for those dates. Even if it's not mid-October, when we get most of our monarchs, it's still really important to have data from every one of our public dates.
And I actually love that you bring that up because I'm fairly new to Tremont, but one of my favorite stories that I've heard about monarch tagging so far is one of our donors was out tagging with you in the field, and I think it was a day she was there with her friends, and I don't think they saw like one butterfly the entire time, like no monarchs at all. And she got quite the education from you and learned all about milkweed and what these monarchs nectar on and their migration patterns and all of these things. And then the next I think in the next few weeks, her husband went out to mow their yard and she saw a huge planting of milkweed, and she basically like threw her body in front of it and said, no, you cannot mow this down. It's for the monarchs. And it's just one of my favorite stories because even if you do go out there and you don't see a monarch, you're still understanding, you have a deeper understanding of this species regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that story as well. I remember going out that day and it almost being eerie because it wasn't just we weren't seeing monarchs, we weren't seeing our little buckeyes and our little butterfly species, but we could talk about that. It's just like, why aren't we seeing this? What does this mean? Is this a general trend? We can look into it more. And then, yeah, being able to, that's really what I'm doing is just creating a bunch of people who are going to go stop mowing. And that's just, it's my, it's ulterior motives. To like re-natify our yards. Every single person, so much yard, public yard, not public yard, private yards, it encompasses a lot of the monarch migration route. So if every one of us rewilded a little bit our yards, if we have space outside, but even if you don't, if you have even a balcony in an apartment or something like that, you could put some native wildflower species and see who you get. You could get butterflies or you could get other pollinators, and it all really helps.
Awesome. Let's see. One other thing I want to chat about that I personally love is that there are specific dates where we bring in kids from the Knoxville community and they're able to come into the cove and touch a butterfly. I remember when I mentioned bringing my son, you were like, you can put a butterfly on his face. And I was like, what a cool experience for a kid. Can you maybe tell me your favorite parts of like being able to work with kids in the cove and monarch tagging specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, as we know, a discrepancy in access. So even though it's a free park, it's not free to drive 2 hours total all the way from Knoxville into a place that doesn't have service, that you may or may not be comfortable in for good reasons. So I think my favorite thing about being there with kids who are there for the first time, especially when they're local kids, right? This is everybody's backyard, but it's especially our kids who live around here. It's their yard. It's their environment that they're going to grow up with, that they'll remember. And so I think That's a good question. And I do want to also shout out while I'm saying this to Mac Post, and as well as all of our volunteers who really do a lot to engage folks who don't have the same access at absolutely no fault of their own to these areas. But I think it's really cool when kids realize like this light in their face. They're like, oh, like I could just come here with my family. Like this is, you could just, it's open, it's free to the public. You can come, not just with Monarch Tagging, but to just go enjoy the coves anyway. But I also, one of the kids that we worked with this past season, he already knew, so he had never been to the cove, but he was like a little zoologist. He knew so many things about the species that you might find. I was learning things from him that were mostly not apocryphal about, like what species were out there. And it was really, really cool. Like kids have so much knowledge and curiosity, and this inherent curiosity, but also they already know so much. Maybe they just didn't get the chance to go out there yet. So for some kids, it's like, this is totally out of my comfort zone. For other kids, that is their comfort zone. They've just never been to that place before. So that's really fun to see kids connecting, and kind of the awe when a monarch is crawling on your hand and getting ready to fly off to Mexico. Like, adios.
Yeah, I love that. And not to hammer that point home, but of course, the money that you all are donating to Tremont today helps to go to fund programs like this. Making sure that kids are getting access to the park, learning new things, getting to spend time with people like Erin who are passionate about teaching their craft and understanding more about our world and our planet.
Yeah, just once again, none of this could happen without our volunteer team. I think a lot of them so far, like all the names that you've said are part of our volunteer team. So thank you guys for not being tired of me yet. Anyway, everyone contributes to this. They're incredible volunteers who do this free education program all the way just completely on their own time. And why we care, of course, is just protection of this monarch culture of multi-generation migration, and also protecting our own culture and sense of place in terms of our co-species that we evolve with, that we live with, that we cohabitate with. So in understanding our co-species, we're kind of also understanding ourselves and our own place in this world and in this region in particular where they're coming through.
Erin, thank you for calling in, and we will see you back in the office soon.
Okay, I'll see you. Bye.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.